road. Good evening. I will call the regular monthly meeting of the Mauldin City Council for Monday, September the 21st at approximately 7 p.m. to order. Our first order of business would be our invocation. Recognize Councilman Craig.
I'd like to ask Reverend Leonard to
Let's pray together. Father, as we begin tonight, we bow our heads to symbolize our humility. We bow before you as our Creator, our Lord, and our Father. And we are thankful that you are the Creator and the Lord and the Father of each and every one of us. We thank you for our leaders in Mauldin, who are servants. We thank you for our first responders, who are servants. We thank you for the citizens of Mauldin, who are servants. We are here to serve you, and the best way that we can serve you is by serving one another. So, Father, I pray that your Spirit will lead and guide us to your wisdom, to your direction, to your future that is best for all of us. We thank you again, Lord, for our city and the privilege of serving and serving together. We lay all of our agenda before you now, and we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. Welcome all of y'all to our regular business meeting this month. Let the records reflect that our entire council is present, along with myself, Mayor Merritt, our city administrator, Mr. Madden, our city clerk, Ms. Miller, there she is, along with our illustrious legal advisor, Mr. John Duke. Thank you, sir. And we also recognize that our various department heads are scattered throughout in the jewelry box at the back of the room. So appreciate everyone being here along with our citizens and our guests this evening. First order of business is proclamations and presentations. It is quite an honor for me to do that. I'd ask that our Chair of Public Safety, Ms. King, if you'd meet me down front, and Officer Justin Romero. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Whereas Justin Romero has been a Mauldin police officer for 1.5 years, and whereas police officers are so important for the safety of our community, and whereas police officers are sometimes called upon to give medical aid as first responders, and whereas upon arrival at a cardiac arrest, Brindle County EMT James Clardy stated that he observed Officer Romero giving the victim chest compressions. And whereas EMT Clardy stated that by starting chest compressions, Officer Romero aided in the resuscitation of the patient. And whereas Officer Romero's tireless efforts to protect the people of Mauldin are an inspiration, and he serves as a model for all citizens. Now therefore be it therefore proclaimed that the city of Mauldin is proud of the actions of Officer Justin Romero, who helped save the life of one of our Mauldin residents with his quick thinking and actions, done and ratified this 21st day of September 2020, signed by Terry Merritt, Mayor. Justin, thank you.
Bravo.
If I could add, Chief Turner cannot be here tonight, and he sent his regrets. He had a family emergency, but we have Lieutenant Miller with us tonight. And thank all of y'all for being here supporting.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, would you join me? Mr. Matt? Turn away until you make the time.
Esteemed council members, thank you so much for having me this evening. I'd like to thank you all. The AT&T would like to say thank you for allowing us to partner with the city of Mauldin with your parks project. We were able to contribute $50,000 of UTC grant money, and we are very pleased to be in partnership with your trail projects.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
Fantastic. Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to extend our appreciation to Ms. Amanda who walked out now, but she sat through an 11 o'clock committee meeting to present us with $50,000. So certainly appreciate her dedication while we were sitting until 11 or 11:30 to accept it. Just wanted to recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. Okay, next item on the agenda is reading and approval of the minutes of City Council meeting of August the 27th, 2020. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move to be accepted as distributed.
Okay, I have a motion, Mr. Black, to accept as distributed. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second in stereo, Ms. King. Ms. Kuzma. So Sandy, can you pick one? All right, any discussion, corrections, adjustments that need to be made in the minutes as submitted to you? Ms. King.
Just to note that it's August 17th. I think it was read the 27th.
Yes, it's 17th. I said the wrong date, so August the 17th.
It happens to the best of us.
Thank
Thank you.
Ms. King. Also would note that I think Ms. Miller has made the adjustments on page 14, the two action items with our recreation director appointment of Mark Kumalander and our fire chief director, Mr. Mahone, Chief Mahone. Those were stated as a vote, and it should have been the word motion. Ms. Miller has made that correction, but y'all will note it in your copies also. In order to save paper, we didn't send them out again. Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as noted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, so. Okay, next section we come to is public comment. The first public comment area we come to is for agenda items. So if you're signed up to speak on an agenda item, you would be recognized during this time frame. You would have signed off the log. We've read this before, indicating as our presentation will be limited to 5 minutes per person, not to exceed 30 minutes for all citizen comments. Following conclusion of the business items agenda, this person signed up to speak not on the agenda will have an opportunity later on in the program to speak. So we're good to go on that. So anyone desiring to speak on an agenda item, it is not noted on here. 7 people signed up. Are any of them prepared to speak on an agenda item? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. Next one is report from our city administrator, Mr. Madden.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I want to take one opportunity to thank staff for their efforts in planning and hosting the barbecue festival this past weekend. Mayor Merritt, I believe you have a list of the winners.
Yes, Mr. All right, Mr. Madden. The Saturday, it was called Butts, but the pulled pork is probably better for us. The pulled pork competition was won by the team Pimp My Pig, led by Mr. Dean Price. The scores, the perfect score is 17. His score, which was done by the South Carolina Barbecue Association certified judges, was 16.354, which was 7 hundredths greater than the second place. So that's how close it was in the top 4 in that area. Then the ribs competition was the cookers get together and do a buy-in on that, so it's a cash prize type thing. The ribs was won by the team Vicious Pig Barbecue, Mr. Robert Brinson. He took home $350 cash money. They spread it out between the second, third, and fourth place. So that's nice of them. On Friday night, you had anything but a pulled pork or butt competition. 2 different categories, savory and sweet. The savory was won by Smoke by Day, Fire by Night, Mr. Jim Bennett, and they prepared lobster roll. These competitions were judged by volunteers or celebrities, or whatever we want to call them. We appreciate them coming and doing that. And this competition was also close. But the sweet category was by Tailgate Hater, Mr. Philip Miles. They prepared a banana pudding. So both those teams get free registration for next year's festival. And then the People's Choice Award on Saturday for pulled pork was Fitz Barbecue. They were presented with the Gabe Hunter wooden plaque, and they also get a free registration for 2021. So thank you, Mr. Ray.
No, absolutely. It was a total team effort. Community Development Department, the Police Department, Fire Department, Public Works, and of course the Recreation Department all pitched in to make the event as great as it was. So I really want to thank staff and make sure they're recognized. I also want to take one moment to recognize Willie Stewart, who is our Assistant Recreation Director. He was recently promoted to that position. Mr. Stewart was voted president of the South Carolina Athletic Programming Board earlier this month. SCAP is what that board is known as. They're the governing body for all youth sports throughout the state. And so their athletic division oversees all the guidelines and rules for youth programs. So Mr. Stewart is Mr. Stewart is over that as president for this year. So that's a great accomplishment, and I want to take a moment to thank him. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I know he's not here today, but I know he will watch this. I would appreciate if we would show our gratitude to Woody Stewart. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Madden. Next area to move into is reports from our standing committees. There should be a copy of our monthly newsletter that has all the detail in it. But if any chairperson would like to add to their committees for this past month, feel free to do so now. First one, Chair, Finance and Policy, Chairman Reynolds, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to look, I didn't see Ms. Pomeroy on there. Was she able to chime in for us from the chamber?
She said she was going to Zoom in. She told me that about 4 o'clock.
I did not see her. I do not see Ms. Pomeroy in here at this time.
Do we have her report? She was preparing me also.
I did not receive a copy of her report.
Okay.
Mayor, I just wanted to make sure before I started talking, I addressed that.
Good catch.
No, Mr. Mayor, we have a couple things coming up on the agenda, or one thing coming up on the Finance and Policy Committee this evening. We'll be addressing towards the end of the meeting a couple of council requests from that meeting, including looking at how our election process works within the city that will be coming up, as well as we have some dates set for meetings with our auditors, which are important for the city to make sure we bring in auditors. We're not only required by law, but it's a healthy practice to make sure the city is running its books efficiently and taking our fiduciary responsibility to our constituents. But those meetings will be set up.
Step down, Del Black. Step down, Del Black.
Sorry
Step
about
down,
that.
Del Black.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. I believe it was set up in the middle of October that we had a meeting, so check your calendars for an audit workshop coming up. Other than that, that's all I have to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Ross. Public Safety, Ms. King.
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Public Works, Mr. Creighton. Thank you. Economic Land Development, Mr. Matt.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Building Codes, Ms. Kuzma.
I don't have anything at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Recreation, Mr. Black.
Recreation has nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Okay, next unfinished item, we have a ordinance for the second reading that comes out of Building Codes, Ms. Kuzma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is second reading on an annexation of Access 100 property at Old Lawrence Road.
You can hardly hear anything that's being said.
This property is currently undeveloped. However, an adjacent 53-acre tract in the city of Mauldin is currently being developed for the Access Point Business Park. Phase 1 and Phase 2, which include 156,000 square foot building and a 158.760 square foot building respectively are currently underway. Phase 3 will include a 284,580 square foot building. All the utilities are available, including water and sewer, and it's currently located in the central fire service area. This tract will be served by the Mauldin Fire Department upon annexation. They're also requesting, I think it's the I-1 district is
Can y'all speak up,
established to
please?
provide for manufacturing, assembly, and warehousing activities, and this district includes regulations and standards intended to protect neighboring land uses from potentially harmful noise, odor, smoke, dust, glare, steam pollution, or other objectionable effects. So, again, this is second reading to annex this property in, and I believe there is also a rezoning request to I-1. So at this time, I make a motion to accept this ordinance on second reading.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzma. I have a motion to accept the annexation rezoning. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Black. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Now we move into new business from our standing committee items. The first one with the tire amnesty coming out of Public Works. So,
I support Del Black
Mr.
resigning
Craven.
after this meeting.
This request comes from the Public Works. Currently, we collect tires throughout the year. We store them for a truckload.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
To collect the tires until we have enough for a truckload. There's a lot of paperwork involved, and these are stored and taking up space. So the Matt Fleeman, Public Works Director, has proposed that we have a tire amnesty, that we schedule a time a couple times a year, then we collect those tires, and so we don't store them, we collect them, and we dispose of them at that time. That's basically the FEMA funds.
Is there an action item?
Oh.
A motion.
Okay, the action is to approve this program to be enacted immediately. Make the motion.
I have a motion that we accept the recommendation for staff on the tire amnesty program to be implemented immediately. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. King. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fairlane. Looks like we're back to you for the vegetation management procedure.
Yes. Currently, Public Works does not have a procedure policy for how we deal with our vegetation management. This is a very well-written procedure. It's very detailed on how we handle different situations and how that we manage the basic maintenance of our vegetation in the city of Mauldin. If you've not read it, I'm very impressed actually how detailed this is and how well it's well written. I would make the motion that we adopt this the vegetation management procedure. Make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fragan. I have a motion before us on the vegetation management procedure, Public Works. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Reynolds. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item is coming from our Public Safety Committee, Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we have tonight for consideration is, well, the background is we have a canine dog that we recently retired, and historically the canine would stay with its handler. So this particular canine is Paco. He's 14 years old, and his handler is Lieutenant George Miller, who's over in the jury. So we have a resolution tonight to approve the sale and the transfer of property, of city property, which would be Paco the canine. So I would make the motion at this time for council to approve the resolution for the sale and transfer of Paco, our canine.
Second.
Can't hear anything that's being said.
Yeah, I have a motion before the floor to accept the sale and transfer of Paco, our retired K-9 unit, to Lieutenant George Miller. I have a second from Mr. Matney. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Note that we are having some audio issues in our old equipment, and we apologize to our citizens for that. Let them know that in this fiscal year, it has been approved that this is going to be renovated, so we'll have new audio, video, and live streaming and be available. I'll try to repeat most of the motions and the seconds tonight where everyone can kind of hear that. I don't think I have a problem being heard on my mic. If I get back to Ms. Kuznar, I might ask you if you'd go stand up to the podium. That way they can hear you when you do your thing. You don't have to do it right now. Use it at any time. Oh, there's one right there.
Oh, well, I have this, but I don't know that it's working.
It's working. Yeah, it's on.
And we can hear you fine.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, probably would have been appropriate on the same committee report to mention that we selected a contract to have that updated, and they are in process now.
In process. Good to go on that. Okay. And congratulations to Lieutenant Miller. Thank you. Victoria said that real good care of Paco. He will do. Thank you. Let me get caught up here now. Got that. Oh, no. We're back to item D, which is back to you, Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I speak loudly, so if they can't hear me, then we obviously have major problems. So with the retirement, the retirement of Paco, that leads us to having the need to replace Paco with another canine. If the minutes would reflect that last month on August 17th at our council meeting, we discussed the same issue and council approved the purchase of a new canine for a price of $8,500. Also noted was that this canine would be purchased from Shallow Creek Kennels, which is located in Pennsylvania. After our council meeting on August 17th, it came to staff's attention, to Chief Turner, that we have a local kennel, Astro Kennels, who has a kennel here in Mauldin, but their main location is over off of Scuppletown in Simpsonville, who now supplies canine dogs. So it was brought to committee last week to bring this matter back before council, that in light of Astro now supplying or having canines available, that we use the local kennel here. Not only are the dogs the same as the dogs that we would get out of Pennsylvania, but it would reduce travel costs and et cetera for staff having to go to Pennsylvania. So I just wanted to note that since we did vote on that on August 17th, and that the motion did include that the purchase would be made from Shallow Creek Kennels, that to be transparent, that we bring this back before council tonight to vote once again on the same purchase, but from Astro Kennels. So I will put in the form of a motion requesting the approval of the purchase of a canine at the cost of $8,500 from Astro Kennels located here in Simpsonville.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Okay, a second from Mr. Crayley and Mr. Reynolds. One discussion, Mr. Counselor, is the motion to override last month's motion appropriate?
Yes.
So we're doing the same thing, but this would override the statement of where we're located or getting it from, so we're good to go.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The subsequent action supersedes a prior action.
Fantastic. Should have asked you that. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the purchase of additional new K9 unit at a cost of $8,500 from a local kennel out of Simpsonville. So, any discussion? Mr. Rose.
Thank you. I would just like to mention that I appreciate Ms. King bringing this back up and trying to be as transparent as possible, even though it's $8,500. I think that it's important to make sure that even in the small numbers, we're doing our due diligence. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is take-home vehicle request from Public Safety. Also, Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before us, we have a request for the approval of a take-home vehicle. So the history on, well, let me back up. It's worth noting that this request came out of committee with no recommendation. It was a unanimous vote out of committee last week to come to council with no recommendation. The reason for that was I felt, and as committee did, that council needed to be, and public as well, reminded of a vehicle policy that was passed in August of 2017. There's members of council today that was not part of council when this policy was passed. So back in August of 2017, myself, the mayor, and Mr. Black were on Finance and Policy Committee, and we worked for months and months on this policy. So the gist of the policy was that there would be no take-home vehicles to go outside of 10 miles of the city. The only way a vehicle could be taken home by an employee over the 10 miles was if it came from a department head's recommendation and the approval of the city administrator. So we have that. The department head made the recommendation. Mr. Madden has approved the recommendation. The majority of the committee did not feel that this was the direction that we needed to take as a whole. So, in saying that, due to the policy that we put in place in 2017, it is the wish of committee that we stick to that policy. Therefore, my recommendation would be that no action is taken on this item tonight.
There is a report from the standing committee of no action on this particular agenda item. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would just add that the reason, again, to bring it to council was that if there were any questions as to why committee did not forward this for action. So if there's any questions, we'll be glad to answer them at this time. Otherwise, again, I would make the recommendation of no action.
Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. King, how many times in the past year, month, whatever, give me a date on how often would Mr. Rice be driving back to the city to investigate why he would need to come back? So if it's, or let me back up. Under what circumstances would he need to come back to the city outside of normal business hours? And how many times has that occurred over the past 6 months?
I do not have the figures as to exactly how. I think it's 6 in the past month, but normally if there's a fire, you have to have 2 investigators. We provide 2 investigators to come back in. Mr. Rice, who's our fire marshal, would be one of those folks that would come back in after normal business hours, regardless of where the fire is. If it's in the fire service area, he will come in and investigate that fire. So this is a way to be a little bit more efficient, as opposed to him having to come in from his house to the station to get a car and then go out to the fire or the scene of the fire. He would be able to go directly to the scene from his home.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Any other questions? Mr. Mack?
So do we currently have a motion on the floor?
There is no motion on the floor for this item.
So don't we need to have some sort of motion to take action, even if it's no action? Are we going to hold it? Are we going to send it back to committee?
It's the pleasure of council. I believe there's some action items that we need to take an action, either returning it to committee or vote it, or have a motion up or down. Ms. What do you
It
say?
depends on whether the committee submitted this for informational purposes only, or whether the committee's report was to take action on it, which I'm not familiar with what the committee did.
Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The minutes of the committee meeting last Monday reflect that the action, Councilman Black made the motion to forward this item to council with no recommendation. Councilman Kraling second, vote 3-0 unanimous.
But it is before the council for action, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Wasn't submitted for informational purposes only, but was submitted without recommendation from the committee.
Okay, so there needs to be an action for that, Ms. King. Would you entertain one, or would you like full council to open that?
They can go to council.
I was going to ask, don't we need a motion so that we can even have a discussion on the agenda item?
Yeah, that's what I was asking Ms. King for. Yes.
So I guess I have to make a motion regardless? Is that what you're saying? Or
Well, your
Or either-
options are to make a motion in support or in opposition, or to table it. If it is your desire that council take no action, it can be tabled.
those are the options.
So I don't think you'd make a motion not to have action, would you? I mean, not to approve it.
No, that's good.
Then my motion would be to table it. Or my recommendation would be to table it.
Okay, I have a motion from Ms. King to table the request for a take-home vehicle for Deputy Fire Marshal. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Reynolds. Is there a discussion? Mr. Madden?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if it would be appropriate to have the chief join us for some comment.
That's your desire, absolutely.
Absolutely, I would request that. Chief, I understand that.
If I may, Chief, could you get to the podium where they can, everybody can hear the microphone, I hope. I want to introduce yourself.
Brian McCollum, Fire Chief. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
AKA new guy.
New guy.
Chief, how often is he coming in the middle of the night to retrieve a vehicle and then go to scene?
Since January, he's probably come back 6 times on structure fires we've had.
Okay. Does he currently have lights in his personal vehicle?
No, sir.
Okay. Would he be able to have lights in his personal vehicle to allow him to go to a scene, or does that cause?
We don't, like I said, nobody has it in their personal vehicle. They don't have lights and stuff in there.
Okay. How much does it help a potential investigation to have him arrive on scene faster?
Well, that way he can be there and observe everything going on. We can actually utilize him also being for safety or different things on that fire scene until we get it all contained, until they start their investigation.
So aside from being inspector, he's serving as incident safety officer?
Well, it just depending on what the incident commander may need. I mean, it just all depends.
Okay.
But we're all on callbacks. I mean, that's what, if we have sent out a 911 call, then like I said, we try to report back who's available and all that.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And, okay. Any other questions from council?
No, I don't have a question. I have a comment. I'm sorry.
So that was 6 times in 9 months.
So since 6 months, since January, like I said, we've had 6 callbacks, approximately 6 calls. He's came back and investigated.
Okay. My turn. So we have currently how many deputy fire marshals?
Currently, we have 2.
And both of them are qualified to do.
Well, one of them's not. He just got promoted, and he's going through training and all that. That's what Marty's helping him with. And then he's got to go do the training part of it.
Okay. And
for the investigation part of it.
Okay. His time frame, if he had to report to the fire scene, his reaction time would be approximately what kind of time frame?
In his personal vehicle, or you talking if he was?
Let's assume he's got to come and pick up a city vehicle.
You're going to be probably looking at 30, 45 minutes, maybe.
Okay, and that's for the guy that's local, or is that?
No, that's for the one I'm asking for the request for. The other one lives 1.1 miles away from here.
Okay, so he could respond in. His response time would be coming here, picking up the vehicle, and going to the fire. So his response time, if he's a mile and a half away, would be 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
If that, depending on the location of where it's at. Instant.
And the other one is 20 miles away, so I think Google Maps shows his response is 39 minutes to get to HQ, and then time to.
So his truck's actually at Station 2 on Feaster Road.
Okay.
Yep.
So basically, an hour for him to get on scene.
Time he gets there, he gets his stuff, equipment loaded up, whatever he needs, and then come on out there.
Okay. The last question, if they're investigating the origin or the circumstances with the fire, is that during the active fire, or
No,
is that
that's
afterwards?
afterwards. That's afterwards.
After it's put out, then they would start
That's
their
correct.
investigation. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so, all right, good, that gives me, thank you, Chief. Anyone else? Ms. King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, to clarify, has the since August of 17, when the vehicle policy went into place, has the, if the fire marshal's on call, has the city vehicle remained at Station 2 on Feaster Road?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
has it been, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
stays, Fisher Road, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Ms. Guzman.
Thank you. So how often is he on call?
He's on call 24 hours.
Oh,
Every day, yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if like they alternated.
Not at this point in time, we don't have the staffing for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our chief? Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussions? Ms. King.
Thank you. My last comment. I just think it's important to clarify that this isn't anything personal. It's just simply has to do with a policy that had never been in place for the city. There was no vehicle policy in place for the city of Mauldin with almost 200 employees until August of 2017. And I just think it's extremely important that we respect that policy that's in place. The standard operating procedure up until today has been that the truck stays at Feaster Road so that the employee can go to that fire station, pick up the truck, and then go to the scene. If approved, the truck would have an additional 20 miles per day, one way, because it's 20 miles from the outside of the fire district line. Again, I don't think it's an emergency situation that we change what we're currently doing under this situation.
Thank you, Ms. King. So, Mr. Crowley.
Quick comment, correct me if I'm mistaken here, but if he's 10 miles, within 10 miles outside the line, he would be eligible to take this on, correct? Is that the policy, 10 miles? It's because it's 20 miles.
The
right?
policy is 10 miles.
So there is a policy, it's the distance and the wear and tear on the truck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Hearing, Mr. Mack.
I'm going to have to vote no on the tabling motion for one simple reason. We're not just talking about an investigation after the fact. If that's what we were dealing with this particular position, then I would understand the need to adhere. But we're dealing with fire and life safety issues where he is a participating officer on an active fire, doing what, as Chief said, whatever the incident commander needs him to do. That may be serving as a safety officer, that may be dealing with a host of other things. But in the line of work that they're in, where seconds and minutes can mean the difference between life and death, we want to make sure that we have all the personnel available that we can. And if this allows him to get home faster, or get to the scene faster, especially on an active fire, then I support that. I think that the law enforcement, I think the fire service perform very different functions than a lot of the other departments that we have in the city, and I don't think that a one-size-fits-all approach really works here. So again, this is nothing personal. I'm just going to have to vote no on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Any other discussion? The motion for us is to table the request for approval to take home vehicle for our deputy fire marshal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign?
No.
Mr. Mack. So 6-1 to table, the motion carries, it is tabled. Thank you, Ms. King.
Thank you.
Next is funding assistance agreement from economic development. Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Broad, would you join us up here, please? I'm going to go ahead and make the motion so we can get into the discussion and allow Mr. Broad to give us some additional input. I move that council approve funding assistance agreement with what was formerly known as Project BOSA in the amount of $5,000.
We have a motion from Mr. Manning to approve the funding source for Project BOSA. Second from Mr. Reynolds. Eager. Okay, any discussion? Mr. Manning?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Broad if he would provide some insight for any of the council members who may not know where we are, so that we can hopefully get this taken care of quickly.
Yes, sir. So we have facade grant money that is provided by GCRA through Community Development Block Grant Funds that we get through our federal partners. And in those funds, local businesses can apply for improvements to their storefronts. And so this particular company that is locating into the city of Mauldin has applied for funding. They are spending way more than the traditional amount on their infrastructure and their facade improvements, which will assist and enhance the look of our city overall over the next few years. We're excited about this project. And so they've requested some additional funding from the city and the amount of $5,000 for additional facade grant improvement funding. So we brought that to committee, and that's for your consideration tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Manning. Any other questions for Mr. Broad or Mr. Manning? Hearing none, the motion before us is to approve or to consider the approval of the agreement for the facade funding for Project BOSA in the amount, I guess it's the amount of $5,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries 7-0. The next item before us is approval of capital and operational items coming out of finance and policy committee. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion so we can get the discussion underway. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the capital and operational adjustments as recommended in the budget amendment presented in your packet. And I'll go through those individually.
Okay, I have a motion before us from Mr. Reynolds to approve the committee recommended funding sources. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Mr. Matt. Any discussion? Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the end of each fiscal year, it's our job to reconcile what we budgeted and what we actually spent. This year, due to previous council's efforts as well as this council's efforts in the middle of COVID, and with all that was going against a lot of cities, not just the city of Mauldin, the city of Mauldin was still able to have a surplus at the end of our year. And I think first I'd like to commend previous council's ability to plan and prepare with a strong budget that was fiscally responsible, that gave the city an opportunity to go through what could have been an extremely challenging time and was challenging for a lot of other cities. So certainly want to commend previous councils as well as this council by continuing to sharpen pencils as we go through our budget. Also like to commend staff, because clearly we're the one, we sit at the diocese and talk about all these things, but it's them and Mr. Madden's leadership as well as Ms. Abercrombie's to really put the pen to paper and do a great job of making sure that we're being careful when we really need to. Like I said, there were a lot of other cities who really struggled during this time, and the city of Mauldin did not so much. So with that said, we have a number of items in here. We ended up with about a $1.6 million budget surplus from last year. And with that in mind, staff put together a list of a couple of initiatives that make good sense for the future growth of the city, make good sense for where we're at as a city, and make good sense for what the city's trying to do. So I'd like to go through a couple of those things. First, the largest item was adding to the capital project fund balance. This is your CIP. This is a 10-year plan, and as you guys know, we have a fire department, multiple fire trucks coming online, and this is adding about $1.1 million to that fund balance. So that helps prepare us as we move forward for large capital improvements to our city to be able to maintain the high level of service that we do. Second item was going to be a budget. Personnel budget for Public Works, adding $100,000 to their temporary employees. As you guys know, Public Works is struggling to maintain our high level of service based on not having our inmates available, and this would be a way to give Public Works temporary employees to keep up with all the things Public Works does, trash collection, debris pickup, and all those different things. Three is leadership development. This is putting aside about $25,000 to improve employee training with respect to diversity and inclusion. Four is replacing the chairs in these chambers, and those of you sitting out there, and if your backs are hurting by now, that's completely understandable. Placing about $17,000 to replace those. Another item that makes a lot of sense is we are putting aside $159,000 to repave the entire parking lot at City Park. Go walk the parking lot and you'll see why this is important, especially with our senior center being there. We're also looking at purchasing property adjacent to Public Works, a Public Works information campaign for $8,000. And as we talked about earlier, the construction of the Swamp Rabbit Trailhead, which AT&T has generously donated $50,000. We're asking to set aside $125,000 for that effort. Upgrades to Miller Road Fire Station of $25,000, and then replacements of HVAC units listed in the packet at about $48,595. Those summaries are at the end of your packet, and I think ending my time of discussion on this particular item, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to point out that it can oftentimes be looked at as a negative that a city comes out of their fiscal year with surplus, and I'm of the opinion that it's a positive if you're doing it with good fiscal management. So, any items for discussion? I'm sorry. That's all I have for that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Any discussion on what's laid out before us? Mr. Black.
Mr. Mayor, on Council Wood on page 62 under the HVAC replacement, I noticed there's a broad gap in there from 7,200 to 12,800 for the same tonnage on the units. Is there any reason we got approximately $5,000 difference between the same tonnage units?
I think.
I didn't see an explanation. I know there is probably a good one, but.
Sure, yes, Mr. Black, if you don't mind, Council, I'll ask Public Works Director Matthew Freeman.
Two of the units are going to have both the heating and the air replaced. One unit is only having the air replaced.
So some of them are heat pumps and some of them are not. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Two of them are going to be the heating and air, so it's a complete replacement. The other one, which is the lesser of the cost, is just an air conditioning unit.
You know, I just wondered because it goes from 7,200 to $12,895 for the same tonnage. That's the only reason I could figure. Some of them are probably heat pumps, and some of them just strictly air only.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Black. If I could restate for the audience that might not have heard it on Zoom or wherever from Mr. Cleveland, the answer to Mr. Black's question was the unit that's the higher dollar is heating and air conditioning, and the lower cost unit is for air only. So that's the answer back to that. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend my motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to allow $25,000 on council initiatives on diversity and inclusion.
Is that in the form of amendment, or are you just basically amending your original motion?
It was in the form of an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
And he can do that, especially start as an amendment or as just a new motion as amended his first motion.
Either way, Mr. Mayor.
So you can do it either way. So since you made the original motion, you can basically restate your motion, provided there is agreement from Mr. Matthew to move his second for now. Or we can treat it as an amendment. Let's do it that way, it's clear for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was what I was.
All right, so Mr. Reynolds has proposed an amendment to increase the leadership development costs from $15,000 to $20,000.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We already had, within the original motion, I had $25,000 for the leadership development. That was specifically for Mr. Madden and his staff, as well as supervisors. What I'm asking for is an amendment to allow leadership development and diversity and inclusion specifically to council initiatives. So as we go through, if it gets second, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly give a discussion.
Yeah, hold on with that, okay. All right, so you're not amending section 3. Your amendment is to consider $20,000 from the budget to approve inclusion and diversity training at council's discretion.
Right, council initiatives on diversity and inclusion.
That's good, okay.
And $25,000, Mr. Mayor.
25,000?
Yes, sir.
25,000.
I'll write a sticky note and do it next time.
Yeah, I have an amendment from Mr. Reynolds to add $25,000 as an amendment for council discretion of diversity and inclusion training or initiatives over the next fiscal year. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Mr. Craven. Any discussion? Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This just came about because as we looked through the packet, I realized what we were funding within the packet that you received was specifically for our leadership as well as Mr. Matt's management team. I know you've been working very hard to guide the city through diversity issues, and you want to get it right. So what I'm trying to do is give an outlet to make sure we have a funding source available for the initiative that the city has coming up.
Okay, so your $25,000, will you have a funding source from it for it?
That will be taken out of the CIP. The amount that was going to go to CIP. I have that, I'm sorry, I've got that written down, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so your amendment is to put $25,000 for diversity and inclusion initiatives by council and decrease the amount being put into CIP.
That's correct.
From $1,101,704 minus $25,000.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not going to do the math. Is that clear, Mr. Mayor?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Got it. Okay. All right.
And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Any other discussion?
Just for clarification, Mr. Reynolds, the additional funding would be for council initiatives. We have $25,000 set aside for staff funding, and this is specifically for council.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That was back to you, since you made the motion, the original motion it was $15,000 for leadership development. So is that correct, or 20?
Mr. Madden, would you speak to that? I called you this morning and questioned that as well.
Yeah, what's correct, Mayor, is and members of council, it's equivalent to a Scrivener's error. On the fiscal impact table, on the item in your agenda packet, page 63, provides the breakdown of the items and the amounts, and so there's a discrepancy on that list and one item that was described in the narrative of the memorandum. So the correct amount is on page 63.
63. 63 is, everybody understands 63 is the correct amount of 25,000 in the original motion, not on page 61 under leadership development. Hang on, I was reading the wrong
I
page.
thought you weren't doing that.
No, I was reading the page. Okay, so is that all you have, Ms. King?
Yes, sir, thank
Okay.
you.
Good. So we're on the amendment to add $25,000 for council initiatives on diversity and inclusion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the amendment carries 7-0. We are now back to the original motion as amended by Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Reynolds. So, any discussion on the original motion as amended? The only thing we need to know is that the 25,000 will be deducted from the CIP amount, so it still comes out to the total of 1.679. Everybody understood? No discussion. All those in favor of the original motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion as amended carries also.
Mayor, if I may, I would move that items 8H and HI be considered informal.
Motion to consider informally agenda items H and I. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. King. Any discussion? All those in favor of consideration informally of the two agenda items say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, we are now to consider items H and I informally as committee of the whole. Action item H, Cultural Center auditorium renovation. I would suspect that would come out of economic development, Mr. Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Broad to come on back up. This is an agenda item that we talked about in committee the other night to improve the lobby area at the cultural center with phase 1 and phase 2 and the dollar amounts that go along with it. So I'll toss it over to Van.
Yes, sir, Mr. Matthew, thank you. We did indeed discuss this in council. More information for our committee session, but if you remember, or perhaps you may not, because most of us weren't here when this plan was originally adopted in 2009, part of that plan was to add a portico that would have been a handicap ramp accessible into the upcoming, at some point, a new lobby expansion. Well, at some point during the renovations and landscaping a couple of years ago, an actual handicap ramp was added on the side to the right front entrance. And then upon renovations of the auditorium and some more projects and discussions with staff, we've really elected to kind of go in a different direction with the lobby and the plaza instead of a portico. So we thought it would really be appropriate for council maybe to adopt the new plan that was presented to committee, or at least a permission and approval or a stamp of approval if you so desire for the new plaza plan rather than a portico, since it was officially adopted at some point in 2009, which was the original plan. So our request would be to approve us, staff to move forward with the plan as presented to committee.
Mayor, I move that we approve the plan improvements to the cultural center and allow staff to move forward with the plan outlined during committee on last Monday.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Matt that we have moved forward with the plan as outlined in committee's last Monday. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Reynolds. Is there any discussion concerning this plan?
May I interrupt for just a moment?
Mr.
I think we need to be clear on the record that this action is also to supersede the prior adopted plan in 2009, so we don't have two plans going.
That supersedes the plan adopted in 2009.
Thank you.
Additional to the motion for Mr. Matt.
I just wasn't finished with the first one yet.
All right, right, so we have the motion and the second. They plan to supersede the previous plan as outlined before us last week on moving forward with, I guess this is phase 1, 2, and 3 of the renovations at our cultural center. Any questions?
It was a good plan, no doubt.
I have a question.
Ms. Kuzma.
I'm sorry. On page 79, the preliminary pricing, it shows phase 1 and 2, but it should be 2 and 3.
Yes, ma'am, and Ms. Guzar, you found that error I made the other night in committee, and that's correct. We're really talking about phase 2 and 3. Phase 1 was the auditorium renovation, that's completed and done. And this would be phase 2 and 3, which would be the new plan that you guys saw Monday night. Yes, ma'am, that's correct, thank you.
I want to be sure I understand. On page 79, the preliminary pricing should be phase 2 and 3.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're putting. Okay. I'm old, I'm slow. Got it.
And I would point out too, that's only if we continue to raise the funds for the entire phase project. That it would include some grant funding. If not, we'll scale back and do what we have money for.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Kuznar. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to accept the plan as submitted before us and will supersede the original plan, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, we are, I will guess back to you, Mr. Matney, on project crustacean.
Thank you, Mayor. Move that council approve the proposal for project crustacean.
I have a motion from Mr. Matney on approval for the budget. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second in stereo for Ms. King and Mr. Reynolds. Ms. Miller, you can pick one. Okay, any questions on the motion to accept the recommendation for approval of project crustacean? Ms. Kuzma.
I just have a question on how many square feet.
That is a great question. I don't know. But I suspect somewhere around 700 to 800 square feet at the max, maybe 1,000, but it's in that area.
Thank you.
I will get those numbers and get those to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzma. Any other questions? I have one, I think it was stated in the committee the other night that coming off the back of the cabin, there may be an addition there to handle some of the things. And the ramp there that was, I think it was stated ADA compliant. I don't know if that ramp applies since the entrance might be from the front and not from the rear.
Yes, sir, that still will be ADA compliant.
Okay.
Our DDS department will be working with the team.
And we realize that back porch comes out about 3 or 4 feet and then it immediately turns right.
Right.
So the side of that cabin is not available for an addition with the existing ramp, which was put in place twice.
Right. If it's moved, it would be realigned and done at their expense.
Okay. Good. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion for approval of project crustacean was approved 7-0. That concludes our agenda items for new business, and we are now to public comment. And there was no public comment on our agenda items, so that means our full time allocation is available for any public comments from our citizens or those businesses or people having standing in our community who wish to speak. The first item on, the first name on the list, if I may, Ms. Neighbors, if you would come forward and state your name and your address, and the 5-minute limitation is in effect tonight. Thank you.
My name's Jenny Neighbors. I live at 1K Court here in Mauldin. Let me get my words here. I'm not a super awesome speaker, so I need my written word. I really appreciate the allocation of the funds for diversity and inclusion training. That is a great thing. I've been doing diversity and inclusion work for about 7 years. I know how important it is to begin that work. I also know that it's easy to feel like you're doing something if you're doing diversity and inclusion training. It's the first step. It's not the most important step. So I would like to talk for just a moment about time and about words. And so as a white person, I understand from experience that learning about racism can feel like action. It's big, it's powerful, it can be a revelation. But learning about racism is not action. Learning about racism doesn't change the status quo. Learning about racism is important, it's a step, but it's not a step that changes policy. Making the world more just, moving the community towards justice requires action. So, white friends, you've had time to listen to the gentlemen of the concerned citizens of Mauldin, who have ever so patiently and generously taken time to educate you and me. And we must continue to listen. That's good. That's how we learn. But don't take their patience and generosity for granted. White people have been asking black people to be patient for a long, long time. The time that you have been given to learn is time that has been taken from those who have been so graciously and patiently educating you. And meanwhile, they are being actively denied fair representation by the very council you sit on. There is not trust in the council. Your thanks for their patience is not enough. So I'm going to read one thing here. Just a short little piece from Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail that was written about 60 years ago to the white churches of 5 white pastors from Birmingham. Great piece of writing here, of course. So he writes that, he's talking about a friend of his. He said, I just received a letter from a white brother in Texas. He writes, all Christians know that the colored people will receive equal rights eventually. But it is possible that you are in too great a religious hurry. It has taken Christianity almost 2,000 years to accomplish what it has. The teachings of Christ take time to come to earth. Such an attitude stems from a tragic misconception of time, from the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time itself is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. More and more I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. So please, I urge you to think about how you use time, not to allow it to stagnate, and that you think about how important it is that we have everyone on the council here who can represent all people fairly in our Mauldin community. I think that is only right and just. So I encourage you to continue in the direction you're going, but encourage you to take action and to respect the members of the community who work so hard to make this a better place. Thank you.
Reverend Wade Leonard. Again, just state your name and your address.
My name is Wade Leonard. I live in the city of Woodruff, but I work in the city of Mauldin at 150 South Main Street. Thank you all for allowing me to speak here tonight. My purpose in speaking tonight is to speak on behalf of Councilman Dale Black. After serving with Mauldin First Baptist as an associate pastor and senior pastor for the last 20 years, I've had the opportunity to build long-term relationships with many of our church members as well as our community members. Over that time, it is common for me to be asked to write a letter of reference for someone. They're applying for a job, or to speak by phone in regards to someone's qualifications or experience. I have even appeared in court in numerous times to speak on someone's behalf or character or reputation. So tonight I speak on behalf of Dale Black. I've known Dale and his wife Judy for more than 20 years. They have been members in good standing at Mauldin First Baptist for more than 30 years. During that time, I've had many conversations with Dale, as well as many opportunities to observe Dale in small group settings, as well as leadership roles within the church, as well as within our community. During that time, I have only known Dale to treat everyone around him with respect. He has a pleasant demeanor and a warm personality and a heart for serving. During the years, Dale has shared with me a time or two when he has disagreed with something about our church, which is not unique to Dale. I think just about every church member has done that at some point, but he has always done so in a good spirit, and I always knew that his heart was for me and for the church and wanting nothing but the best for our church and our community. I have been and I continue to be proud to call Dale my friend and my brother in Christ. Now, having said that, that does not mean that Dale is immune from mistakes or poor choices. Naturally, none of us are. I realize that there is a current discussion regarding Dale's recent Facebook posts and how they could not only be construed as insensitive or inappropriate, but how also some may feel these warrant his removal from council leadership. Let me be very clear about this. I'm not here to advocate for one position or the other regarding that matter. As I stated earlier, while I've served at Mauldin First Baptist for 20 years, I'm not a resident of Mauldin. I don't have a vote. This is a matter that should be decided by the citizens of Mauldin. But I want to close by being very clear about this. I support Dale Black as my brother in Christ. To me, support doesn't mean you agree with everything they say or do, nor that there won't be consequences to what any of us say or do. But like our Lord Jesus, I believe that our love for each other should be unconditional. Early on in this matter, I spoke with Dale directly, not to tell him what to do, but to simply let him know that I love him. And that is true, and that will still continue. Again, my goal here is not to take sides, and I pray that no one here who hears my words or reads these words would look at me as for or against. I have great respect for our city, for our citizens, for all those who are involved in this issue. I have great respect for my fellow clergy who have spoken out in regard to this matter, and I applaud the passion for justice and the need to shine light on the sin of prejudice. My hope is to partner together in the future. I am willing to serve, to help things. When all this began, our church made this a matter of prayer each week during our Wednesday night prayer service. I also recently concluded an 8-week series about prayer that Jesus offered for all his followers in John 17, verse 21. May they all be one. This continues to be my prayer. And again, I am at the disposal of the city and the community to serve and to help in any way that I can. Thank you all for letting me share tonight.
Mr. Brett. Please also state your name and address, please.
Mayor, my name is Tim Brett. I live at 37 Endeavor Circle in Mauldin. I lived in this great city for a lot of years, probably 50 years. I started, tell you a little bit of background, primarily because it'll help you understand my point of view. I started in this city in 1975 as a police sergeant, served 5 years in that role. Later had the opportunity to enter politics, and I've served in multiple disciplines representing this great city in the General Assembly, Department of Transportation Commission, and other areas. I've spent the time and the effort to lead the fundraising for the Jack Brewer Library that we have here. And I was one of the chairmen of the Mauldin Cultural Center in the early days. I love this city, and I love each of y'all. And so what I'm going to say to you is from my heart tonight. It's not my intent to be disrespectful to anybody
There may be a difference of opinion, and that's okay. But I've known Dale Black for a long time. He's in my Sunday school class. He's a man of character. He's a Christian gentleman. He, like me, likes to stay on this little phone too long. And as you go to Facebook today, I just called mine up here, it's full of all kinds of political news, fake news, people's opinions about various things. And one who's strongly opinionated about things can easily go and just push a little thing that says share. S-H-A-R-E. That's all you got to do. And whatever's there pops up on the screen. And that's what Dale Black did. Now, you got to understand, Dale Black went to Parker High School. He's not very smart. But he pushed that button, and he has riled the masses. I felt sorry for him. Mayor, I know you and Mr. Mayor have met individually with members of black clergy in the city. I know that you've had opportunity to have conversation. You know, I've had a lifetime in politics, and I see things a little differently, and I'm kind of at the twilight of my career. What I spend most of my time doing now is serving as an assistant chaplain at Perry Correctional Institute. That's what my love is, and that's what I do. Perry is a maximum security prison located about 15 miles from here. If you've ever been to Perry, about 2/3 of those men are black. And these are men that are hurting. They have no hope. They don't understand forgiveness. A lot of their families haven't seen them for many years. Most of them are lifers there. I've had the opportunity to go down there with Dale Black and serve Christmas dinner for a whole wing there and see the interaction that he has with some of these folks that need a little bit of encouragement, need to hear about Jesus' love for them. So I know what kind of man he is. I know this thing is really boiled and bubbled up. The thing that bothers me the most about this is that I know that Mauldin does not have a race problem. It has never had a race problem in 50 years I've been here. And so all of this demonstration, all of this conversation is brought a bad light on our city, and that bothers me a lot. It bothers me that they're destroying it's destroying our reputation. You know, I personally find some of it rude, unfair, disrespectful, non-forgiving, and aggravating. And I can understand in today's times that circumstances are such, not only in Mauldin, but in other places, where they can become a prop for a larger agenda. Now, I don't mean no disrespect to anybody about this, but I do believe that enough is enough. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I had the opportunity to go on Facebook today, and I searched several sites, and one of the sites I searched was from Bruce Wilson, who's a very familiar person who feels strongly about his views with Black Lives Matters. And I'd like to read to you what he posted. Don't get worked up over things you can't change. People you can't change. It's not worth the anger, the build-up, or the headache. Control only what you can. Let go. And that's the message that I have tonight. Please let go. Enough is enough. Let's move on. We certainly got the message. We understand mistakes were made. But we need to heal as a city and continue the wonderful life and the place to live that we have here. And that's awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Scott. Good state name.
My name is Phil Cochran. I live at 435 Bishop Drive, and I'm here to speak about stormwater. I know you're shocked But first of all, before I get to that, I'd just like to say thank you for all of you who are here, because you are here burning your family time. And that is a non-renewable resource. You'll never get it back. So my respect and my thanks to you for spending this time trying to make this city a better place. One of the issues we have in Mauldin, as just about everybody knows, is unabated stormwater flow. And for me, it's particularly painful. I get all the stormwater in my entire neighborhood down on my house. Every time we get 3 inches of rain or more, my house floods. And I've been dealing with that for 25 years. I've contacted city council, city administrators, mayors from previous administrations over and over again. I've provided DVDs, pictures, evidence, costs, you name it, and nothing has ever happened. Not anything. So for the first time in my life, in 25 years of being a resident of the city of Mauldin, paying my taxes faithfully, I have a glimmer of hope with this administration and with the people on this council that maybe something is going to change. Now, what we used to be told as longtime residents was, oh, stormwater is a county problem. You need to talk to county. When we would go to county, they would say, no, that occurs in the city of Mauldin. You need to talk to the city of Mauldin. And you can see where that road leads, right? It's just one big, vicious circle. And you always come out of those conversations being the loser yet again. So I'm seeing a little bit of hope. I'm seeing that in the last 2 elections, stormwater was a big issue. It probably contributed to the demise or to the fact that certain people didn't get reelected. I think it did contribute to giving us a new mayor. And so for those reasons, I'm here to just ask for one thing. We've got the COVID pandemic. We've got a lot of other things going on. We've got City Center. We've got Dale Black in the middle of his thing going on here. Please don't forget about stormwater, because it impacts citizens like me. It impacts our life every time it rains. Every time it rains, my house is damaged. Every time it rains, I have to drive across flooded city streets. And I'm hoping, being that the city attorney is here, that the city doesn't wind up spending money to compensate a family or some other litigant who hydroplanes on stormwater flowing across the city street and comes to you and says, we're going to seek a $3 million judgment or a $5 million judgment for the loss of the life of our child or my pregnant wife or whatever. So the cost on the front side of this thing, I think, is going to always be much less than the cost on the back side. So again, I'm just here to say, please don't forget about stormwater. It is a long time problem in this city. The ditches in my neighborhood haven't been maintained for 40 years. I've been here 25, and I live in a neighborhood where there are people who've lived there for 40 years. And their ditches, once that development was put in, the ditches haven't been touched by the city on those city streets for 40 years. So I think liability could easily be established depending on who the litigant is. I don't want to see that happen. I love this city. I like the city. My son served on the police department in this city for a number of years. Our home is here. My grandkids live here. That's a big deal to me. And I'm just asking all of you, from Public Works, Mayor, don't leave us in the place we're in. I bet if I asked people to raise their hands here, there would be a lot of these people who say, yes, my property is affected by stormwater flow. It needs to be in the ditches. It needs to be in the culverts. It needs to be in the storm drains. It doesn't need to be flowing across the top of the ground where it can create difficult situations. So thank you for what is beginning to happen. Mr. Mayor, thank you for convening a committee. I think citizens will learn more about stormwater. And I think, I think all you guys know all about stormwater in Mauldin, right? Am I preaching to the choir? All you got to do is drive through the city in a 4-inch rainstorm, and you get a real good idea. Our police department puts up barricades, and our fire department is out there in their fire trucks and in their emergency equipment anytime we have a big deluge in the city. So you guys are aware. Thank you so much. Thank you for what's happening. And I won't go my 5 minutes. I appreciate your time.
Actually, you're at 5:40. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Geiser. Esther Simpson. Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Robert Simpson. I live at 420 Adams Mill Road. I am one of the ministers that have met with the mayor. Mayor, good to see you again, to the council. I've been in Mauldin. I moved out of Piedmont into Mauldin, bought a house, got 2 boys that goes to Mauldin High School. One plays on the C team, one plays on varsity football. I am the pastor of Victory Temple Baptist Church. Been there 13 years. I am the former president of the South Carolina PNBC, Progressive National Baptist Convention. I was president over that convention for 4 years over the whole state of South Carolina. I am now currently the president of the Baptist Ministers of Fellowship in Greenville of Vicinity, which consists of well over 70, 80 preachers. When you're dealing with, when you're a leader over people, you are held to a certain standard. It's true. You can go to Facebook. You can look at the page. You can look at share. But you have a choice. And the choice that was made by Mr. Black, I don't know him personally. It's not a personal attack. It's accountability. It's about respect. We can stand up here and use Christianity all day long. That's what we're told to my forefathers years ago. Christianity. Forgive, but yet we still get hurt. Don't mean that I don't love him. But is it fair to represent me? Is it fair to represent me, a paying tax person here in Mauldin? It hurts to see my leadership with the explosive of the comments. It hurts. I don't believe in attacking. I don't believe in attacking his family. I don't agree with that. But when we want a better Mauldin, where's the change gonna be? Is it the same? Pack it down? Where's the change? Will it change? Do you really hear the voice of the community? I don't think so. I observe everybody come in, they laugh, we talk, we have fun. That's what friends do. But can friends, my friends, tell me when I'm wrong? My friends say, you wrong. They don't stand behind no doors, no walls. They say, Reverend, you're wrong. It needs to be changed. Mauldin, I love Mauldin. I don't have a problem with water. I don't have a problem with the people. I just have a problem with the sin, the sheriff, and what represents me, what's represent my people. And it's not a racial thing, it's the right thing. That's all I have to say, man. I like that. I like to get two of those.
Thank you, Pastor Simpson. Thank you. Glasses, sorry. Is it Mr. or Mrs. Steph?
Possibly Steele, Mr. Mayor?
Seal?
Brad, Stormwater?
Yeah, okay, Brad's good. Got it now. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry about that.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Brad Steele. I live at 156 Burke Hall Circle in the Bonnie Bray subdivision, next to the old golf course. And I serve on the HOA board currently, and talking with a neighbor over the last week or so, he was approached by the developer or the contractor, somebody doing some subcontracting work or site work in terms of grading and such. And he was mentioning that at a particular corner on our street, we're looking at potential stormwater issues as well. You know, last Thursday, with remnants of the hurricane, you know, the 3 inches, 4 inches, whatever we had, that even as of yesterday morning at 11 o'clock, there was still some standing water in that area because they hadn't completed the site work and such. And so I was on the city's website earlier and found that I believe the gentleman that was talking earlier about the advisory group, and kind of wondering how I get on, or is there a mailing list or schedule for meetings? So I may talk to him after. I know this is a comment section, so I can ask a question, but so that's my concern. You know, there's 600 homes going in there, both sides of Ashmore Ridge and such, and so I'm trying to be a good neighbor and want to work with the city or groups, appropriate groups, to kind of address this and make sure it gets, you know, everybody's happy, everybody knows what's going on, and avoid some things that the gentleman spoke about. So I'll talk to him afterwards, but just want to know that the community is, the subdivision of Bonnie Bray is concerned and would like to be heard as well, and would like to work with y'all to have a good resolution and avoid any potential issues as the gentleman mentioned. So thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Pastor Thornton. You know, state your name and your address.
My name's Thornton, 114 Doctor Street, Greenville, South Carolina. I'm gonna read you words, from our Bible. Everybody, like Pastor said, everybody want to talk about the Bible. Well, the Bible said, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by the fruit is bad. You Buddha, how can you speak evil and speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Good man, out of the good treasure of his heart, bring forth good things, and evil man, out of the evil treasures, bring forth evil things. But I say to you, that for every idle word you say, that man may speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words, you will be justified, and by your words, you will be condemned. The words didn't come out my mouth. It came out Councilman Black's mouth. The community is not pleased with it. The leadership needs to take actions, and they need to be responsible for the actions. If it was a black person that said these things. You had representatives, and you had the white pastors come out, and all the white community come out, and state representatives, Lindsey Graham, and all of them come out and speak against maybe a black person. Will they still be here? Theologians from Taylor's Baptist Church, they would have come out and speak against a black person. Will they still be here? Your own neighbors have spoken against you. And have you ever noticed the ones that only seem to endorse him seem to be one color? Have you thought about that? You know, when you ask about racism, a racist is always good to his own color. A racist is always good to his own color. Look at the age group. They grew up in segregated times. Look at the mayor of Spartanburg. Look at his age. He grew up when blacks didn't have rights. He grew up in that old hatred. And they're trying to recreate it. But we're going on a new path, I believe. Look at the NFL owners now. Look at the NBA. Look at Trevor Lawrence. Words have power. And this country going one day live up to its creed. With freedom, liberty, and justice for all. We see the symbol of hate being torn down. Your words have power. Lies have killed plenty of people. Ahmaud Arbery is dead today because someone called him a burglar running in his own neighborhood. Martin Luther King was killed because someone called him a communist. And they riled up the white community so bad with fear. He's a communist and he's bad for the country. That someone got the rifle and assassinated him. Emmett Till was killed because some white man, not a white man in this case, but a white woman, said he whistled at him. Come to find out now later, he never ever whistled at him. Because they riled the people up. If you want to know racist behavior, racists always hide behind lies, and they always hide behind fear. They always hide behind lies and fear. And when you get in there and say stuff like that about the NAACP, that's creating fear. And matter of fact, those same people that created the fear were the same ones that didn't allow women the right to vote. The same one that created the fear, the NAACP, helped allow women to have the job that you now have. It took Moses multiple times. But when God said, set my people free, when Jesus said, who is free, we are free. And we are not going back in any kind of slavery. Now, if you want to believe God set us free, why did we have the Civil War? You want to take us back then? Then we had the Civil Rights Movement. Now you want to try to take us back now. Look at what's going on in the country. When will you ever learn that who the Son set free is free indeed? We're not going back to slavery, and God will not allow us to go back to slavery. You know a man by the company he keeps, by the fruit he bears. Like I say, it's not what goes in a man's mouth that defiles him, but what comes out. And I'm asking this question, I believe my time might be up. As we go home tonight, do we really have freedom in America and liberty and justice for all? I heard all your plans tonight, but I didn't hear nothing about affordable housing. So as you go home and you preach, remember this. We have a national holiday after Martin Luther King. And I always ask, well, why don't we have a national holiday after Billy Graham or whatever? Why? Billy Graham wasn't willing to take that risk. He didn't want to get out there with the people. Jesus was the only man of the church, but he got out there and marched with the people.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton.
Thank you.
No one else signed up, so we will move from public comment to council request. Ms. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cochran mentioned the Stormwater Committee, and I see it's on the city calendar for tomorrow. There's a meeting. Could you please send a list of those committee members to at least Public Works Committee? Would that be possible?
Yes, but that's correct. It is not a committee. It is a group.
Okay, I just read what it
Yes, I know
stated.
what was written.
Sorry.
I know what the plan is, but that is a group that will initial meeting tomorrow, so, yes, but I'll be glad to.
I would just like to know the members, so if I'm approached, I know that they are part of that group.
All right, I will send a briefing out to council after tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else, council concerns? No other concerns there, sir?
I'm a student. I'm Joe Robinson.
Yes, sir.
I live on Ashmore Bridge Road in Ashmore Estates. But for the last 5 or 6 years, but we got a lot of 18-wheelers and 2-ton, 5-ton trucks coming through there. It's on the corner of Ashmore Bridge for CVS drugstore. We used to have an island there. When you remove that island, that's where the problem come in. Instead of those trucks going to Coniston, they come down Ashmore Bridge Road, going over to Donaldson Center. And that road is too small. That's why it's always tore up. You can't turn in because you might get hit. Those people going real fast on that street. And Bunny Bridge Golf Course was over there. But now they putting, houses in there. So there's no point in those trucks coming on that street, period. So they shouldn't be coming through there.
All right, sir. Let me speak to you after the meeting's over. I'll be glad to note that, get your name, get back to you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Comment was closed. I'm sorry. That's okay. Council request. Any additional council requests? Okay, hearing none, we would stand adjourned unless by acclamation unless council rejects. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.